In this tutorial, we'll be looking at cost behavior. There's fixed costs which change with regards to production, and variable costs which do not change with regard to production. Now let's consider an example to see whether we actually really understand what a variable cost is and what a fixed cost is. Let's say you've got a cost, and this cost in the first month is 1,000 Rand, second month 1,000 Rand, third month 1,000 Rand. The question is this a fixed or a variable cost? Chances are you're thinking that because it doesn't change, it's a fixed cost. Let's see production. Production for the first month was 100 units, second month 100 units, third month 100 units. But what if production changes to 200 units and this cost then changes to 2,000 Rand? You see, production has changed and the cost has changed, so therefore this is a variable cost. The key thing is not whether it changes or not, it's about whether it changes in relation to production. So if production stays the same and it remains the same, it doesn't mean it's a fixed cost. It's about what happens when production changes. Now let's have a look at graphs here that will speak about fixed costs and variable costs. In the first graph, we've got a total cost y-axis and we've got units of production in the x-axis. Now a variable cost, if there's zero being produced, as you see here, then there'll be a zero cost. But as production increases, the variable cost also increases. So it's just a straight increasing linear line. That is the total variable cost curve. With a fixed cost on the right hand side, when production is zero or when production is at 1,000 units, the fixed cost remains the same. So production changes, but it does not change. That's the definition of a fixed cost. Now let's have a look here at a variable cost on a cost per unit or total cost per unit basis. It stays the same on a per unit basis. Perhaps this will be better explained by way of an example. Remember, in the first two graphs we looked at the total cost curve. Now we're looking at a total cost per unit curve, and we're saying with variable cost it stays constant. Let's say you're in the business of selling hot dogs and the cost of a bun is 2 Rand. So when you have one bun, the cost is 2 Rand divided by 1, which is 2 Rand. Two buns, the total cost is 4 Rand and the cost per unit is 2 Rand. 3 buns will have a total cost of 6 Rand. The cost per unit again is 2 Rand, thereby showing you that on a per unit basis the graph for variable cost stays the same. Now the graph on a per unit basis for fixed cost is a decreasing graph. Again, let's have a look at an example. Think of rent. Rent is a fixed cost and rent is 20,000 Rand. It will always be 20,000 Rand. When you produce 1 unit, the rent cost per unit is 20,000 Rand. But when you produce 2 units, that same 20,000 Rand is divided by 2 units now, so the cost per unit is 10,000 and 5,000 for 4 units, thereby showing that the cost per unit for fixed cost decreases. Now let's have a look at two other types of costs in terms of behavior. You've got a semi-variable cost. So because it's a variable cost, it increases with production. And then on the right hand side you've got a semi-fixed cost. Now the variable cost, remember, total variable cost increases proportionately with an increase in production. So that's the yellow line. A semi-variable cost, on the other hand, which will be shown by way of a blue line, increases but disproportionately so. So the first line shows a variable cost or a semi-variable cost, and this is a cost that increases at a decreasing rate. The second blue line, which I'm drawing now, is a semi-variable cost as well, but it increases at an increasing rate. So the yellow is a variable cost line, the blue lines are semi-variable costs. These are costs that increase disproportionately to the increase in production. A semi-fixed cost, as I'm currently drawing, is a cost that is fixed for certain levels of production. Maybe it increases every 100 units. So it's fixed for different ranges of production.